I heard this scripture, two actually. With God, all things are possible. There's nothing that God cannot do. When I heard those two scriptures, he resounded on me that it would be very good to talk to the person who created me. So one day I picked two chairs together and I sat down on one and I said, God, wherever you are.
You want to have a one-on-one dialogue with God.
Yes. I was very intentional about this. And I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm not interested in working by faith. I'm interested in working by sight.
Really?
Yes. But at the end, when my mother came out, she looked at me, she said, God forgot to tell me that one of my child will struggle all the days of their life.
Your mom must be a very funny person.
And then she looked at me, she said, you decide who you become. It's your choice.
Wow.
Deep down, I knew I wasn't saved. So at the age of 20, I was praying and I was asking the Lord for a birthday present. On this day, I recognized, I said to myself, if I were to drop dead here right now, where am I going to go? And I knew I could answer the question. I'm going to Heart Strix. I decided on my own. I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, I want to give my life to you, but I don't want the salvation. I call it the roller coaster salvation.
Okay.
You're on today and tomorrow you're off. I said, Lord, what I want is the salvation that you said, whomsoever the Son of Man shall set free shall be free indeed.
Indeed.
So that word indeed was key for me. Because in the one of things I've learned over the years, in the position of anger, there is no wisdom.
In the position of anger,
There is no wisdom.
now let's move the conversation forward. Currently, you live in Germany.
Is it?
So what happened? Were you in search of the greener pasture? Did you japas like the Nigerians would say?
Yes.
So how did you find your way in Germany?
Well, no, I didn't run away from my country. I love Nigeria so much. But I left Nigeria and I went to Germany to study.
Okay.
And the intention was to come back after study.
Okay.
And one of the things I realized very quickly when I left, before I left Nigeria, the Lord said to me, I'm going to make you a bridge between Africa and Europe. But I didn't
Bridge.
yes. So I didn't understand what that meant. So I work with a non-profit organization called Youth Information.
Okay.
And while I was studying in Germany, I left Germany. I went to Switzerland. I was there for 10.5 years. And then I came back to Germany. And along the line, I got married to a beautiful German lady.
Okay.
My wife is
Okay.
So we intentionally we left after we got married. We went to South Africa. We came back, and the goal actually was to return back to Nigeria. That was the goal. But after a while, very quickly married to a European, looking at the insecurities in the country, that was a different. We had to rechange the way. Well, I had to rechange the way I was thinking and the way things were gonna go. But I left Germany. I left Nigeria. I came to Germany because I came to study. And while I was studying, I could see very quickly that I needed to stay longer to understand certain things more. For example, in Nigeria, if something is broken, you call someone to fix it.
Yeah.
You pay them for that. If you try that in Germany, they charge you per hour. So the Germans, I learned a lot of skill in Germany. I learned the skill of management. I learned the skill of being able to look at things from different perspective. I learned the skill because the Europeans don't have two heads, actually. They only have one. So it's like our own. And when I look at England, for example, England was a slum. But today, England is a first world country. Singapore was not a first world country a couple of years ago, but they picked themselves off from where they are to becoming a first world country today. So getting the knowledge and the understanding the skill of the things I learned in Germany, which enabled me to be able to once a while go back to Africa to use those skills back there.
So you talk about being a bridge between the European world and the African country.
Yes.
Now, what does that mean in practical terms?
I think that's one of the reasons why sustainable invasion started.
Okay.
Because I was always going back to Africa. I was always we took teams with me from Germany, take them to Africa, do a lot of medical things, community developing things, outreaches. We did that. But very quickly, I realized that the lives of people in Africa were not changing. By the AIDS, yes, they were worse because at the end of the day, we're preaching a message that was not sustainable. So technically, we would you get people who say, okay, no, I'm no more going to be collecting bribes and doing all that, and then at the end of the day, they're not collecting bribes. What's going to happen to their pocket is going to get dry. Yeah. So poverty became their friend. But we, in one hand, I kind of went, what are we actually doing? Where we're not we're helping people, but not for the long term. And that's just and when someone's situation was better and we made it worse, then it also interprets to them about the message of the kingdom. So that allowed me to begin to think differently. And say, okay, how do we implement what we're doing in a very different way? So it's not offering aid.
Okay.
It is more offering skill, excuse me, and empowerment to people so that they're able to take forth what they've learned to build for the future. That's one aspect. Second aspect is in Nigeria, we don't have a saving mentality. We have a hand to mount mentality, not intentional. It's because of the economic situation.
Okay.
So you don't, most times people say you only save from the abundance you have, but actually it's not true. Because when a farmer farms, if he doesn't save seed for the next year, he will not be able to plant the next year.
Very true.
But one of the things we've learned across the years, over time, is we eat our seeds.
Oof. We eat our
We
seeds.
eat it because we're not thinking about the future. We're thinking about today. And I saw very quickly what helped Europe was the winter. We don't have winter in Africa. We just have rainy season, hot season, and rainy season. That's it. But in Europe, you have 3 seasons. So you have to think about the winter. So this lesson I learned from the ants.
Okay.
Once I saw ants, I mean, Proverbs talks about the ants. Say, go to the ants, consider ways and be wise. I mean, sometimes when we read scripture, we just go fast, pass it through. So one day I went to an ant hill and I was watching the ants, what they were doing, but it was summertime. So I decided to put my leg in between the line just to see what would the ants do. They went around it. They coordinated themselves and they went around it. Now, what they were doing was they were preparing for the winter. So they were going looking for food and they were storing the food, but they were very coordinated. They were very disciplined. And they didn't have, there was no leader. It's like, I'm the boss. No. They worked together to prepare for the winter. So I think in Africa, we do have it, but it's mostly with the wealthy people. They know how to save, they prepare for the future. But a simple person who doesn't have all the skill and the ability, how do they prepare for the future? So one of the things we did very quickly was when we did a project, we had the community where we gave water to.
Okay.
Their children, especially the girl child, should be the one going out for hours looking for water. But I knew very quickly that if you tell Nigerians what to do, you've just created problems for yourself.
That's okay.
So you don't tell Nigerians what to do. You allow them to think what they want to do. And you work from it's their idea that you build on. So I said to them, now that you have water, what would you give in return for this water? So they said payment. I said, no, 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 we're not asking for cash. What do you think will substitute that will be of great help for you? And then someone said, oh, the girls go out to look for water. Now that there's water, they're not going to go out any longer. So what are they going to do? So yeah, our girl says, okay, what do you do then? So they cook. So I said, but it doesn't take 3 hours to cook, right? So someone said, well, maybe it's an opportunity for them to go to school. And that's the thing. If you empower a woman or girl child, she makes a difference in the community. She has the capacity to transform that community because she's been empowered. If you disenfranchise a woman or girl child, you literally disenfranchise the community.
Wow.
That's what a lot of people don't know. Because women women are I like to say this word, women are a blessing to society. Okay. Take a woman out of society, take a woman out of the family, take a woman out of a man's life. But women are, but they're the most, they don't have anyone speaking for them. They're the most looked down upon. They're the ones that actually pay the price. I mean, the woman carries the child for 9 months. I mean, we men, I mean, we can't even hold it for 3. Yeah. So they now said, but we don't have the finances to send this child to school. Yeah. So I said to them, okay, why don't you do it this way? We take 5% of your salary and we keep 5% of your salary as payback if we pay the school fees for the children to go to school. But we're not paying it because we didn't want to do that. So what we're doing was we're saving the money for them. But we didn't want to tell them to save because we knew that if we tell them to save, they'd be like, no, we don't have the capacity to do that. At the end of 12 months, we asked the same question. I said, so what's the plan for the next year of the school fees of your children? Well, the Nigerian word, we trust the Lord. We said to them, what if I tell you that they've already done it? And I said, how? I said, all those money we were collecting from you for 12 months was kept aside for your school fees, for the school fees of your daughter for the next 1 year.
Really?
Yes. So for 1 year, so we paid the school fees of the child for 1 year, not months.
1 year. 12 months.
Yes. And all it took was for them to be disciplined and be really to go through the pain of saving. And after 12 months, when I said to them, now you have done it, continue doing it. But if we had told them at the beginning that they should do it, they wouldn't do it because the thinking and the thought behind it, because they never done it. Because we can never do this. But then after that, they saw that it's possible for them to do it. So we now passed the responsibility back to them very quickly.
Wow. So it is not just about solving the problem for them, but solving the problem with them.
Yes. And allow them to think through how to solve problems.
For sustainable innovation,
Yeah.
right? So you are not just giving aids,
No.
but you are empowering the people.
Yes.
So are you working in any other country apart from Nigeria?
Yes, we are in Uganda and Tanzania.
Oh, okay.
So in Uganda, we're doing a water project there. And in that water project, there's also the opportunity for people to learn a skill when it comes to baking and the rest of it. In Tanzania, we're doing a fish drying, fish and fruit initiative because Tanzania has a lot of fruits and they have a lot of fish and they supply Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have these widows who their husbands passed, but because they never worked, so there's no way for them to be able to provide for their family. And we didn't want to get involved in paying the school fees of the kids. So we decided that what we do is empower the mother so the mother is able to provide for our children. So we did ask them what they want to do, and they said, no, we could dry. We could get fish and dry it. And normally what they do in Tanzania, it takes them 3 weeks to dry the fish. So we found a machine in China that dries it for 5 to 6 hours.
Wow.
And solar power. So we were looking, because everything we do has to be sustainable and it has to be innovative. So we didn't want to use wood because of the environmental consequences to have. Because when we teach on that, we also have to, we can't teach what we do. We teach what we say. So we wanted this woman to start thinking differently. So that's the project that we do in Tanzania.
So I know a couple of people who are interested in investing in organizations like yours, but they trust the systems and the institutions.
Yes.
How do you present a trustworthy platform that can be measurable in terms of the work that is being done?
One of the things I thought very quickly was it's easy to give money.
Okay.
But after a period of time, what has that investment, I use the word investment, what has that investment generated? So what we did was, I always say to the donors, give us 3 years. And after 3 years, I will ask you to please come and see what your investment has done. The reason why I asked for 3 years is because I don't want your seed. I don't want you to just see your seed. I want you to see the multiplication of your seed.
Wow.
So that's one. It's good. The second thing is accountability, because we have to keep ourselves accountable, and the way we do it is we once a year, every project that we do, we give reports. We give report about the projects that have been done. This is what the projects have done. This is where we're at. And if we hold on a project for a certain period of time because of security reasons in the country, we will communicate that.
Okay.
So the what I learned was always, I was in Berlin, and the Minister of External Affairs invited the Africans to come. And he said, for the first time, we want to ask the question, what can we do to make Africa better? Because we've invested billions, well, and we've not seen any change.
Billions with no change.
No change. Billions. And each person had 5 minutes. And I said to him, I rose my hand and he asked me, what do you think? I said, I think your mistake is you're giving the money to government. He said, yeah, but that's the way things are done. I said, no, give the money to people like us who are with the people on a grassroots level. But then don't give the money, track the money. Because you can give the money, but you don't track the money. We can tell you all kinds of stories and you don't see anything. I said, you need to track it because you make us accountable. Come and see what has this money done for people. There were three. One was a lawyer. She just finished law school, and we supported her through law school. And at the end, when she graduated and called to the bar, she decided to become our lawyer. We have two girls. I heard their story. I don't know them, but I just heard their story of these girls walking to school for hours.
Wow.
For 1 year, these two sisters will walk to school because they lost their mother. And when I heard their story, I said, okay, I want to just hear their story. And as I was listening to their story, I was thinking about it, and the Lord said to me, sponsor these kids through school. And I said, where do I get them? I drew that. And he said, make the commitment now. With the money you have in your pocket, give them that as the first down payment. But I want you for the next 3 years, I want you to support them through school. One was 18, the other one, the youngest was 18, the other was 20. The 18-year-old she asked me a question. She said, what do you want in return?
Wow.
I was shocked because I was thinking, what do you mean? And she said, you don't know us. We're not related. We're not connected. Nothing. We're like strangers to you. What do you want us to give you back in return? And I said, nothing. She said, why are you doing this? She was crying. She was like, why are you doing this? And I said, you remember that scripture that says, when I was thirsty, hungry, and naked? And I said, it's simple that I have the capacity to be able to hear your story. Who walks to school for 1 year? That alone shows determination. That shows resilience. That shows purpose. You are going for something, even though it's going to cost you. And I said, that's the reason why I picked you. And we've been, so for 1 year, don't pay their school fees for 1 year. Now, a lot of them think, oh, you have the money. I'm like, no, I don't. I have to literally raise the funds for these girls.
Wow.
And I do that not because I have all the contacts, no, but because I believe in people. Because when I was growing up, I am what I am today because people believed in me.
Wow.
And that's in return, I say to people, if I believe in you and people can believe in yourself, but if you believe in yourself, why shouldn't I believe in you?
That's amazing. So, looking at sustainable innovation and the impact that you are making in Nigeria and these other African countries, when it comes to working with the locals, what are, and even in empowering them to have skill, what are some of the challenges that you have faced in terms of people's attitude to skill acquisition
Yeah.
and also this sense of entitlement?
No. I think one of the things is the whole aspect of tribalism is one. Religiosity is the second thing. So, for example, Christian versus Muslim, we don't look at religion; we look at people. Okay. We do not create favoritism. We don't do that. So we don't look at what tribe you come from or which tribe you don't come from. We look at people because every single individual is meant to be entitled based on what they do, their capacity, their discipline, and the rest of them, that they're able to succeed in applying what they put themselves to do. I think one of the challenges we got was more when it comes to Christians, for example. There's time for everything. Ecclesiastes 3 says that. There's time to pray and there's time to walk. And one of the sometimes is it's like, I need to do some Ramba Shamba. You just talk down. I have nothing against that. You can speak in tongues. You can pray if you want to. That's okay. But there's time for it. Because if you say, I need to go and do Bible study now, but there's work to be done. You go do the Bible study and then you come back. Who's going to do the work? That work needs to be done because there's clients that needs to be covered. There are people, things that needs to be supplied. And I used to say that Jesus was a carpenter, but yet he was a son of God. And yet he knew how to use his time well. And there was nothing that he was accused of. Now, some people I say, but that's Jesus. But let's talk about Paul. Paul was a lawyer, but yet he was very disciplined to the point that he said to the church, thank you very much for supporting me. But I also had something by the side that I could use to support myself. So in the aspect is when we have this aspect where people begin to bring tribalism or bring religion into the business, I say to them, no, sustainable vision is not there based on your religion. Sustainable vision has 3 keys. I call it the 3 E's. It's education, empowerment, and employment. Our desire is to see that people are being educated because education actually releases power. If you're ignorant and you don't have, and what I mean by education is not, I'm not talking about high school, I'm not talking about university and rest of we get there, but want to educate people to see the essence and the importance of what they're doing.
Okay.
Nigeria, for example, Africa in general, has a lot of blue collar jobs. That's good. But if everybody's doing blue collar, who is going to do the rest? So the goal actually is to encourage people based on their skill or based on their giftings to say you can have skill. We want to train in a certain trade and skill. So that skill is able to enable you, empower you for the future, to take care of you and your family. So that's why we're having a skill acquisition center. So we can train people with various skills. The other aspect is when it comes to religion. I gave an example of we get involved in sports. Yeah. And one of the things about sports is that sports opens the door a lot for people. And we had this sports team that had this young man I was watching him. He was really playing really well. He was really good. And we had shoes to give out. And one of those shoes there were 3 new shoes and the rest were used. But I was thinking, who do we give these 3 new shoes to? I was watching them and I saw this young boy and I said, we're giving one to that young boy. Funny enough, the coach said, no, 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 we don't give it to him because. So I said, why? He said, because he's Muslim. And I said, even more so. And the coach was like, we need to give it to our Christian children. And I said, no, God does not segregate between Christian and Muslim. This boy is playing his heart out. We give him the shoe. But the boy has been used to being marginalized.
Wow.
So when we came together, I was watching him. He positioned himself away from being seen. So at the end, when we had the conversation and everything, so I called him and I said, come. And then he came and I said, we're giving you the shoes. He was shocked. He was like, me. He talked about someone else. And even he himself said, why me? I'm Muslim.
Wow.
So I said, we don't look at whether you're Muslim or Christian here. We see sportsmen, a young man who plays, and we look at your shoe. Your shoe is praising the Lord in the process. So we want to change that. And we gave him the shoe, and I collected his old one. I did that intentionally because sometimes poverty you acclimatize to the environment of poverty that even when something new comes, you put it in the shelf so they can be watching it and you go buy. So I collected it and he said to me, I said, no, we're taking this. I want you to put on this shoe and this is the shoe you're going to be using. And the boy, number one, the boy was shocked and he began to cry because for the first time, he said, for the first time, someone sees him. I mean, everybody looked as is that, but we see it's like, no, I play here because I love the game, but I know I'm Muslim. That he has already put that interpretation on himself.
Well,
And that was broken off him. So it's one of those things that we try to make sure that, like the people who are out there, I said to all our staff, I said to them, please do not work with tribalism and do not work with religion and do not have favoritism. Don't do that. We look at it based on merit. If they deserve it and they're willing to work for it, we don't encourage laziness. If they're lazy, we now say, okay, it's wonderful. This is not the right place for you. So we don't encourage that.
so if somebody wants to find out more about sustainable innovation and your project, and they want to support, invest, how can they get more information in regards to that?
Well, our website, you can go to our website, also an Instagram page, and then we have our email. You can it's info@sustainableinnovation.org.
Okay.
So that can be placed on the screen. You can see that, and then you can contact me, and then we can get
The ball rolling.
yes,
Yeah.
the ball rolling.
They are doing an amazing job. Awesome. Now, let's talk about Germany. You stayed back in Germany because you married a German. Anyway, that's a joke. I will not say that if I meet your wife, but I'm interested in your love story.
Yeah.
How did you meet her, and how did you know, yes, this is the one? And knowing that you are from Nigeria, she is from Germany,
Yeah.
the culture difference.
Yeah.
Were there culture shock, even when it comes to marriage, rules, and expectations? Walk me through that. How has it been?
Well, it has been very exciting. I think one of the things is I always knew that I was not going to marry a Nigerian.
Really?
Yes, I knew that. Not because I don't love Nigerian.
Nigerian girls.
I love, but I think one of the things is because of what I was doing. And I remember the 7-year-old girl said to me once, I was in Switzerland at that time, there were a lot of ladies. She said, please come with me. She said, look at these ladies, pick one. And I said to her, no, it's not as easy as you think. She said, just pick one. There's 7 of them, just make just for one. But it was something I was looking for. I needed a woman who knew who she was. Okay. I also needed a woman that I did not have to disciple. She disciple in the sense that she needed to know who God was for her. And I didn't have to come in to teach her who God was. Now, my wife is German, and the German culture and the Nigerian culture, they're two very strong cultures. But my wife was highly traversed. So she had traveled a lot. She's been exposed to certain things and she's been exposed to various cultures. So it was easy for, I would not recommend someone who comes to a country for the first time. I've been in the country for maybe like 6 months. I get a relationship with a person from that culture.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend that in the beginning for certain reasons because the cultural differences is huge. So I've lived in Germany and in Europe for at least 6 years before I met my wife. So I was able to understand a bit of the culture. I was able to see how the culture works. And so the cultural difference between both of us was not difficult because she was exposed, she knew various cultures, she had understood and knew that there's a way to do things that is different from the way she does things. It's totally different. We had to sort through it. And the spiritual aspect was very different because I think a lot of people are they get carried away by marrying a white woman. and it's like Yoruba people say, "I want you Igbo." Okay, so they have this white lady around them, and I wasn't really interested in that because I think that you can have a white lady, but that white lady is a person, it's a human being.
Definitely.
It's there's no difference between the white person and the black person.
Yeah.
They're human beings. It's just so I wasn't really interested in that, but I needed to make sure that the person I'm marrying understood who they were as an individual. They had an identity. They knew their relationship with God. I didn't have to disciple them. I didn't want a situation when I have kids that I have to be the one if I travel, then all the whole aspect of the spiritual aspect of the home stops with me. So I needed someone who understood the whole thing. I remember I called my father and I said to him, I'm in a relationship. And he's like, ah, okay, that's wonderful. And I said, the German said, okay. Um, First and foremost, does she pray? So I mean, it's a good question.
Sure.
Is she a Christian? It's a good question because sometimes you have people get married to Westerners or Europeans, but they're not Christians. And then at the end of the day, you have a big problem along the road because being unequally yoked together is not going to work. So it was one of the we talked through the whole challenge cultural differences, and we had time to ask questions.
Okay.
So we she didn't understand everything. So I was more at advantage point because I've lived in Europe and I've lived in a culture for quite a while. She has not lived, she's been to various countries, but she did not understand 100% of how the African culture works. So she had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions. There were some things, for example, it doesn't make a difference if I wash the dishes in the house. It doesn't make a difference. So I didn't grow up as the typical African. No, I didn't grow up that because I saw my father. My father did dishes. My father served my mother. So I saw this. There was no discrimination between the male and the female.
Okay.
Literally, my mother said to we're three boys. She said all the boys must learn how to cook. We're not negotiating this. We're not. So we went to the kitchen. And of course, we're like, we're not supposed to, like, no, you're going to the kitchen. And the reason she said to us, well, you don't have anyone to cook for you. Who's going to cook for you? So you have to learn how to do that. She taught us how to do laundry. She taught us how to clean a house. She taught us all boys how to do that. So when I came over, my wife was German. We sometimes people are shocked when I cook in the house, and my wife is just and they're like, "You're cooking? That's the woman's job." And I go, "No, it's not the woman's job. It doesn't take anything away from me to be. It requires a sense of humility, but it also requires a position of identity. You have to know who you are. So my wife and I, we talked in the beginning, we talked about finances, okay? Because that's one of the things that actually has a big challenge when it comes to marriage. And my wife asked the question and said, what if we have a financial crisis? How do we get out of it? Because I was working in missions for quite a while, she asked and said, if we have a financial challenge in the family, how do we get out of this financial challenge? And I said to her, if it means I have to leave and get a job, I will do that. Because what does it profit me to say I'm serving the Lord and then my family is suffering? I'm worse than an infidel. So I said I will leave everything I'm doing and I'll get a job to provide for the family. So we had all those conversations. How does it relate with your family? How do you relate with my family? Um, Christmas here, New Year here. What are some of the no-nos of your families and do's and don'ts? So we had all those conversations so we can have an understanding of the various cultures before we got married, and the rest you figure along the way.
So those things that you begin to figure along the way, what was the hardest thing so far from marrying across culture, and what did they reveal about you?
That's a very good question. Actually, I never thought about that. Um, I think one of the hardest things I would say is the assumptions of people. Because when you're married to a Westerner, people assume You marry because you need papers.
Very true. It's very true.
The second thing is the assumption of finances. Like even when we go to restaurants with my wife, they don't give me the bill.
Really?
No, they give my wife the bill because the assumption is he can't afford it.
What?
Yeah, yeah. So they give my wife the bill. I mean, it's a different story. In America, it's not going to work that way. In America, they give the gentleman the bill. But in Germany, they speak, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I don't blame them because most of, well, a lot of people have married for economic reasons.
Yeah.
So technically, when they pass the bill to my wife, she literally looks at them as like, thank you very much, but he's paid the bill. So they like, and they're shocked. They're kind of like, oh, sorry. The other aspect is when my wife and I go into restaurants, I used to say in Europe, I call myself exotic. So when I step into places, people literally turn, like they turn to look. My wife said to me, how do you feel? I said, oh, I feel like a king. So people turn to look because they're quite surprised that you're coming into this restaurant, and a German restaurant for that matter. You're sitting down there, you're eating the food, and you're not worried whether people are thinking of you or what they're saying or thinking. But we know now it's become normal. But in the beginning, that was one of the things that, and some people don't say it. It's just the way they come across. It's like, oh, you got married because you needed the papers and this. And I'm like, no, it happens. That's true. It does happen. But those are one of the things that came across. I mean, in Germany, as Nigerians, we're very relational. In Germany, people are they're very reserved. So at the beginning, doesn't if I got married, if you see someone on the street, you say hi to them. In Germany, you don't. If you say hi to someone, they look at you and it's like, are you okay? So do I go somewhere? So I had to learn that very quickly that it's not personal. But I must say, if the Germans don't make friends quickly.
Okay.
But when they do, it's for a lifetime.
Wow.
The Germans are very committed to their friendship. They'll remember your birthday. They'll remember you will receive at least twice a year you receive a gift from them. So they don't just make friends quickly, they keep to the commitment of friendship.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Still talking about cultural difference, in-laws are always a big issue when it comes to marriage dynamics.
Yeah.
How did your friends and family respond to the fact that you're married from a different culture, and how do they handle it?
I think my parents were okay. My parents were very okay because we were exposed to Americans right from when we were kids.
Okay.
So my parents had missionaries who were in the place we grew up, and they were Westerners, so they were exposed to them. And I think my father knew. My father knew that this one.
This one is your friend. It's not going to marry from the Nigeria.
He knew. But their major concern, I mean, they verbalized their major concern. My father said, don't marry for money. He said, never make a mistake to marry for papers. Don't do that. He also said, don't marry because it's much better there. And he said that to me. He said, it might be much better there, but in the world of marriage, if you do that, it's even worse there than better there.
Oof.
You might have everything you have, but if you lack that peace, you say you can have nothing, but if you have peace, it's worth than having everything. So it was for my parents, it was fine.
That's so powerful and also very challenging in the present day that we have now, because people are seeking for comfort.
Yeah.
And that's a real wise counsel, that don't marry because you are looking for an opportunity to get your naturalization or your papers in another country. And also don't marry because of money or because of comfort, because you may get it, but it's going to be worse off.
Yeah. I think one of the things is that you can get comfort and have naturalization and the documents and every single thing, but what do you gain at the end when the one you say you love, you separate from them? And then at the end of the day, you create a problem for children who never wanted problems. So they have an absent father.
Yeah.
And the absent father in their life is based on the fact that I'm not saying that divorce does it comes from one side. No, it comes from various sides.
Yeah.
But I think people are very quick to get married, but they don't think about the commitment that is involved in being married to someone. They also don't think about the sacrifice that is also involved.
Wow. So it is not just about love and affection.
No, some
Really?
no.
So love and affection are not sufficient to sustain
No,
marriage.
because the thing is, I love what Dr. Miles Monroe said.
Okay.
He said that one of the things about relationship is the first aspect we look at is love. He said yes and no, because love is an institution of work. You have to work so that the vitality of love is cooking. Because love is not um, love is kind, love is patient, love is so love has a certain duty you have to do. In the beginning it's easy because you see the person, the all the hormones are kicking and everything is, but you need the aspect of work, patient. Misunderstandings in the beginning, misunderstanding doesn't come in, but when you start rubbing shoulders together, then that's rubbing in and starts coming in. So it's not just love itself, there are other incentives in the mix of relationships.
So talking about that, so how has marriage stretched you emotionally and spiritually over the years?
I think when we look at the aspect of the spiritual aspect, I don't expect my wife to be like me
Hmm.
because she's different.
That is tough for so many people because people want a replica of them.
No, you can't have that. Even our thumbprint is not. You can't have that. And I think that's something one needs to agree with. Because the assumption is marry someone that is like you. But if you marry someone that is like you, so you have two of you in the house, where's the flavor? So it's being willing to allow the person become who they are and contribute to become the betterment of that person.
At their home pace.
Yeah. So there are certain things as an African and as a Christian and growing up in Africa, coming to Europe, we don't joke with. You know, when we hear one story, we fast and pray. So I'm not gonna call my wife and say, okay, you need to join me in this fasting and praying. No, we can have a conversation about it. I can say this is what I'm gonna do, but I can enforce. I can enforce that because that person has value and I have to value them based on that. The second aspect I think is the whole aspect of understanding, like understanding yourself and understanding the person you're married to. My wife is not. I can go into a place. I don't need to be prepared or prepped. I'm ready. Let's have the conversation. I can go into mingle, connect, link. It's the natural me. My wife will go into a place, she needs time. She's going to be there, but she needs time to connect. Now, I cannot enforce that you have to be like me. You can't do that. Now, I understood it because I was a very shy person. Now, my shyness was connected to something else. But my wife, when she gets to a place and my wife loves to study. Like she loves to study. She's very smart. She loves to study. But at the same time, my job is to encourage her to do what she's good at. And at the same time, the assumption is that I am the one that she needs to support, but I do not need to support her. And I go, no, it has to be both ways. You have to support. And a lot of times men don't like me when I do that because it's like, no, you're talking too much about the women. Talk about us. We have our strong points. We do have our strong points. But at the end of the day, if there's someone you love, you also need to watch out for the benefit of them.
Definitely.
And children also, like someone said to me, I love children. I do love. I was always looking forward. They say when babies are crying, people are like, oh my goodness, there's so much noise. Now, when I look at, I said, crying of babies at that time was music in my ears. But one of the things about children is that children enables you to see the change and transformation that are happening in your life. Once upon a time, they were babies, and tomorrow they become adults that you're looking up to. And then you see their growth, you see their development, you see their achievements, you also see their success rate. But in that aspect, also allows you to see how you have um, impacted in their lives.
I've met your children and they are sweet and wonderful. You guys have done an amazing job.
Thank you.
Very impressive. I'm curious. What's the secret?
Time. I think it's one needs to spend time with children, and children will not ask you for time. I remember when my daughter was little, we as a family would go for walks, and she would always ask me to tell her stories. And but she would say, "Tell me stories you've never told me before." so, so, so it's not repeated stories. You have to. So it allow. I really had to think through the stories to tell her, but we also needed to allow the stories to be educative, something she can remember, but also drawing out from the kids what are some of the things that they're interested in, but also giving her the place to make mistakes because they're children. And when they make mistakes, because I think we, especially we as Christians, want our kids to be perfect. But sometimes the races go, were we perfect? What did our parents, how much grace did our parents give us? And when we made mistakes, how did we become who we are today? It was someone that works that process. So for our kids, when they make mistakes, we sit and we have a conversation with them and we talk with them. And also future too. I think it's always watching what are the giftings of the children and encouraging them in those giftings.
That's wonderful. If there's somebody out there watching us now and they are considering marrying from another culture, or they are possibly married somebody from another culture, but their marriage is in a crisis. From your story, from your struggles, challenges, and victory and triumph, from your trials, what message will you want them to learn from your own story?
I would say don't give up on one another. Now it's really easy to, but don't. The second thing I would say is don't isolate. It's always because I think the isolation comes from the fact that there's a feeling of failure. I have to make everything look nice so that people do not think I failed. I'd say don't isolate, talk about it, find someone you trust, find someone you can confide in and have a conversation about it, and seek for help if you need to. I would say do that. And also at the same time, be patient with one another. I think one of the things about conflict is inevitable in marriage. So it's inevitable. But even in the midst of the conflict, be willing to have a conversation. And even in the midst of the conversation, sometimes you might be right. You might be right, absolutely right. Be willing to be wrong.
Be willing to be wrong, even when you're right.
Yes, be willing to be wrong even when you're right. The reason is because two rights cannot undo a wrong. So you can be right, but in order for you to have a sense of communication, one has to be really
To let go.
to let go. It doesn't mean you're willing to let go and never have that conversation again. It means you're willing to let go and let the steam go off and then constructively come back to have a conversation. Because one of the things I've learned over the years, in the position of anger, there is no wisdom. In the position of anger, there is no wisdom.
Wow.
Once anger comes into the stage, wisdom has jumped out of the window.
Oof. And most people in life, it is when they are hungry and they make life altering decisions.
Yeah.
And it implies that most likely there will not be wisdom in decisions made when you are hungry.
No, there will not be, because it's, I think anger is an emotion.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that anger is bad. It is. There's the points you're talking to a child and telling the child that what you did was wrong. You're not going to be laughing and saying what you did was wrong. No, the child's going to wee, let's have a conversation. So, but there is a level of anger that can make you make a decision that you regret at the end of the day. But rather, what I always used to say is withdraw, reflect, and confront.
Withdraw, reflect, and confront. Let's say 50, well, let's say 20, 30, 50 years down the lane. What will you and how will you want your children to describe you as a father?
Legacy. I think one of the things I want my children to 50 years down the road, 20, 30 years down the road, is to say we had a father who was there. We had a father who listened. We had a father who was able to reflect in love. And we had a father who wanted the best for us and encouraging us to achieve that best, not by putting so much hurdles for them, but by encouraging them and supporting them through the process.
Wow. This has been an amazing time. I feel like not stopping this conversation, but we have to stop. Thank you, Francis, for doing this. It is amazing. It said something powerful. And on that note, I'm going to end. It's not a question of if, it is a question of when you'll be in a season of trial, transitions, and triumph. Withdraw, reflect, and confront. Withdraw, reflect, and confront or re-engage.
Yeah.
On that note, keep the voyage going. Thank you so much once again.
It's been a pleasure.
As we bring this conversation to a close, I don't want you to rush back into your day. Some conversations are not meant to be consumed, they are meant to be carried. What you just heard was not a sermon, it wasn't a strategy, it was a life unfolding in real time. If something in Francis' story stirred you, if it reminded you of a question you have been avoiding, or a calling you have been delaying, sit with it. Growth does not always come with clarity. Sometimes it comes with surrender. And if you are in a valley right now, hear this. You are not lost. You are becoming. Thank you for allowing this moment to breathe with us. Thank you for honoring the silence. This is the voyage where we don't just talk about life, we feel it. Until next time, keep walking. Good.